folks who owned restaurants before the pandemic, right? A lot of them aren't here anymore. You know, the ones who are here, the ones who figured out how to pivot. So I may have never done takeout before, but I'm doing takeout now. People want my food, I'll find a way to get it to them. I'll sign up with Grubhub and all those other folks if that's what it takes. Because what I'm doing is important, not only to me as an entrepreneur, not only to the guests that I'm serving, it's important to the people that I'm hiring and employing. You know, if you get to be that level of success as an entrepreneur, it's because you knew how to pivot and adjust and improvise. Now, I've been an entrepreneur. I am an entrepreneur right now. And I'll tell you, I am still learning, okay? My first 15 years, I went to graduate school, I went to business school at the University of Chicago. I was in the graduate program on health administration and policy. I thought I was going to grow up to be a hospital CEO. I started at Cook County Hospital. I learned some things there. Amazing, right? I worked for the CEO of the hospital. So I learned a lot of stuff. I thought I was going to grow up to be like him, except not in the public hospital. Well, I did work as an employee for 15 years. Here's one. There we go. So I was an employee for 15 years. I also volunteered. I was president of the Healthy Mothers and Babies Coalition, working on infant mortality, but I wasn't an entrepreneur, okay? That wasn't my childhood dream, you know? My dream when I was a kid to be a civil rights lawyer, and then I found healthcare was a place I thought I could really make a difference for people's lives, for patients, and for whole communities, right? So I did that for 15 years. And I was doing okay. I was moving up. I took a job in Boston for Harvard Pilgrim Healthcare, big health plan. I was their director of healthcare policy, first one ever. And then they eliminated my position. Okay. Married, 2 small kids, no income. Whoa, we're going to become an entrepreneur. Because we got to find a way to, you know, my wife the whole time. I didn't want her to be forced to go back to work so we could, you know, live the lifestyle that we've been making with employment. So I got out my shingle, started doing training, that's the whole organization and the ability to work for different people, including people with disabilities, racial, ethnic backgrounds, all that stuff. I started doing that stuff and I loved it. It was really, really hard. One of the things I'll do right up front is if you want to go from being an employee to an entrepreneur, expect to make less money for a long time. Okay? It's like you're talking about, you know, the hard stuff. People want to tell you that. People want to tell you about, well, look, Steve Jobs, da-da-da-da-da-da, you know? That's like talking about, oh, I don't know. That's like talking about John Coltrane. Okay, you got the talent to do John Coltrane? Probably not. But you know what? How did he have the talent? He worked and worked and worked. A friend of mine who was a successful entrepreneur I've ever known. You know why? He's already retired. He's a little older than I am. He's retired. Professional musician. One of the people who knows him said, you could have been Coltrane, but you weren't able to work. You weren't willing to work as hard as Coltrane did. Coltrane died early. My friend's still here. Works really hard. You play 10 instruments at a high level, you got to work really hard. If you got to be an entrepreneur, you have to expect harder than you have ever worked as an employee. But the rewards in the long run can be greater. Okay? When you work, I mean, I'm choosing to work this workshop, right? If I were still an employee, I don't necessarily have that choice. People tell me what to do, right? It's a great choice for some people sometime. And I'm going to ask you the 4 big questions that I wish I had asked, and I wish anybody who's thinking about this answer these 4 questions. 1, why do I want to be an entrepreneur? And it better be a positive reason, not just, I don't want people telling me what to do, okay? Am I passionate about the work I want to do as an entrepreneur? You can tell I'm passionate about doing this work. I love this. You know, if I won the lottery tomorrow, which I don't play, but if I won the lottery tomorrow, I still do this work. You know, I'm that passionate about it. And you need to have something you're passionate about. Doesn't matter whether it's being a teacher like my parents were, or like you were. Doesn't matter if you're a musician. Doesn't matter if you're running a retail store. I have some friends who run amazing retail stores. I couldn't do that to save my life, you know? And I'm certainly not passionate about it. But if you're passionate about something, that's question number 2. Here's, I think, the hardest question. Because most people, it's like being a parent. You don't know what you don't know, okay? How much risk and failure can I manage financially and emotionally as an entrepreneur, okay? So when I was married with, I'm still married, but with 2 small kids, okay, I could take more risk than if I'd been solo because, you know, my wife, when she went back to work, she provided steady income. She provided insurance, right, health insurance. When I got diagnosed with prostate cancer, I didn't have to worry about what's the cheapest way of getting treated. I just had to worry about what was the best way. That turned out to be surgery. I paid $150 for a copay. If I hadn't had insurance, that's $15,000. We'd have been in bankruptcy, okay? So you've got to think about what kind of risk can you take? And it's not just the financial risk, it's all the emotional risk. Is this gonna, you know, break up your relationships? You know, are you gonna estrange yourself from your kids? Well, let me tell you, no amount of money is worth that, okay? But that is a risk that some entrepreneurs have. When you're an entrepreneur, you literally can work 24/7. I've talked to friends of mine, they're a couple. They're married to each other and they own the business together. My wife and I could never do that. You know, they amaze me. I can tell you more about them. But they said, yes, you do work in your sleep. You go to bed thinking about a problem and you wake up and it's solved. That's working in your sleep. But they also work in their sleep another smart way, okay? They own a store, actually they own 2 stores in Massachusetts, close by to each other. And those are open, you know, 7 days a week because you're a retailer, especially they're in a resort kind of community, right? So they make a ton of money in the summer, people come out there. In the wintertime, not so much. Well, they've got a website now. If you want to go buy something from the website, anytime. So people can say, oh, we bought my wife a gong. I mean, a huge gong that we'd never seen or heard that they sent us here in Chicago from Massachusetts, okay? I bought my daughter a bracelet that I had never seen, but I saw the pictures, I trusted them, and I ordered them to send it to New York. So that's another way. If you're going to be successful as an entrepreneur, you better find many ways to do that, right? You write a book, you sell copies of the book that you self-published. You do workshops, trainings like this, from on the web and you charge people to watch, or if you don't charge people to watch, you get people to sponsor them, right? All those things are ways to make money without your being there making the money. Or you have to do that because the critical difference, the number 1 difference in my book is when you're an employee, and you can say this, even if you're still an employee, right? They give you more work than you can handle, okay? When an entrepreneur, the only paying work you get is what you bring in. Think about that, right? Some people say you reap what you sow. Some people say you eat what you kill. Doesn't matter how you say it. If you don't generate it, you don't have it. If you're a traditional entrepreneur, you don't want to take that much risk, go buy a franchise. You know, you can run a McDonald's franchise. You can do really well, but you don't have the same control you have if you're a solo entrepreneur, like I am. And here's the last one, which is really important for those of us with disabilities, for those of us who are people of color, for anybody who is different in terms of their cultural identity. How might your cultural identity affect your entrepreneurial journey? So I'm going to skip to that one. I'm going to come back. Any questions or thoughts before I sort of skip to cultural identity? Okay, we'll come back to the other ones. But I'm going to pass this around since I can't show it on the screen. But these are some different people whose cultural identity might affect their success, their chances as an entrepreneur, right? Got some black women in the room. Now, you know, not all of us are going to be vice president of the United, or a Supreme Court justice, or vice president of the United States, right? But all of us are going to face some challenges because of who we are. You know, Dr. King said, "Judge me by the content of my character, not the color of my skin." That's still a dream. I mean, you made a lot of success, but that's still a dream. People are going to judge you based on your disabilities. They're going to judge you based on your gender. They're going to judge you based on your sexual orientation. And when you're an entrepreneur, what that means is whoever judges you could be your customer, could be your business partner, could be your funder from a foundation. And so you're going to have challenges with somebody who looks like that funder in the face. I was the money manager on a huge multi-million dollar project. Okay? So we were printing a document, thank you. And it was late. And we weren't happy. But I got to sign the check. Guy calls up and says, you know, "I'm sorry that's late, but you know, that department is where we do our affirmative action hires." I was saying, right? Saying like, black folks don't know what they're doing. They can't get things out on time. He had no idea who he was talking to. This was before the days of Zoom. I'm talking to him on the phone. He can't hear I'm black. And I heard that and I'm like, how soon do I want to sign this? You know? And I really thought about delaying it. Now, maybe if I was 66 instead of 21, 22, I might have held it up. I might have gone to my boss and said, you know, I'm not paying this for another 2 weeks. And if he asked, you could tell him why. You know, because you didn't know who you were talking to. And I don't need to be treated like that. But I was a young guy, I didn't do that. But the point is, any of this can happen to you anytime. You don't even know that it happened. Okay? I thought I had another shirt. Let me see. No, I guess I don't. Okay. A different entrepreneurial story. No. I was going to show you a shirt from when I was an employee. But I realized what I did was, I actually put that on the slide deck because I didn't want to take off too much stuff. So let me just get this. This is the cover of this session. I want to pass it around. I'll start with you this time.
I got a question for you.
Yes, sir. Please, absolutely.
Does these same concepts go for nonprofits?
I've spent most of my career in nonprofits, and all the issues are right there. Okay, if I'm in an agency and I'm an employee, I've got one set of issues. If I'm a social entrepreneur, right, I just started my own nonprofit, same issues come up.
Okay.
When I'm an employee, I got more work than I can handle. When I'm an entrepreneur starting my new venture, I mean, that's what Fya did with this. She's an entrepreneur, building this thing. And it's amazing. And part of what she did that most of us don't do nearly as early as her, she built a team around her, okay? I'm part of her team. Am I an employee? Hell no. She's a smart woman. I'm an independent contractor.
Right.
That's the way most of us as entrepreneurs grow. Most employers grow by hiring other employees. They may be in a contractor here or there. But let me tell you, when you hire somebody, you buy a whole load of money and trouble. Now, sometimes it's worth it. But you pay extra taxes because you're paying payroll taxes. If you need to get rid of an employee, that's hard work, and it should be. I'm an independent contractor. If I didn't do a good job, why would she bring me back?
Exactly.
You know, it's very easy. It's like, she didn't even have to say, you know, you didn't really meet that standard. She just has to say,
Oh, I'm sorry.
no, I don't need you back. Thank you very much. That's simple. That's what most entrepreneurs do. I have never hired somebody as an entrepreneur. I've hired a lot of people as an employer, and I had to fire some. I had to fire a longtime employee who had been failing before I was hired. But my predecessor refused to fire her, and he got forced out himself instead. I came in, I had to fire this employee during the pandemic by phone because I couldn't go, you know how hard that was?
Oh, yes.
You know, if she'd been an independent contractor, it's like, I'm sorry, we've made a change of direction, you're gone. Now, because I'm me, I would have still arranged for some recognition and that kind of thing. I don't have any obligation. Even if you're in an at-will state where supposedly you can fire anybody for any reason, don't try doing that because your lawyer will tell you no. You don't really want to go into court and try and defend firing somebody without a hell of a good case. So people don't do it. They go through the process. Anyway, so yes, all those things apply to nonprofits. Nonprofits are different. I think I've worked in public sector at Cook County Hospital. I've worked in nonprofits from small places to the American Medical Association, American Hospital Association with 1,000 employees. I've worked as a consultant with 15,000, 17,000 employee places, public, nonprofit, and corporate. They're all run by people. So much of the things are all the same, but one of the biggest things we were just talking about is hiring and firing. Back in the day, we remember back in the day, the great job if you were black was to be a school teacher, work for the post office, or work from some other public sector, because they can't get rid of you. It's not so true anymore, but it used to be. My father-in-law was a professor, tenured professor. You could, basically you could do anything you wanted to retire on the vine. Then they put in an age limit. He was forced to retire at 70 years old when he was ready. It's easiest to hire in a corporate environment. That's where entrepreneurs operate. Easy to say, I don't need you anymore, see you next time. Or say, I don't need you on this project, but here's another project, I'll refer you to somebody else. Real easy stuff. You get into nonprofits, it's a little trickier because you're mainly dealing with employees. But government, much harder. Very hard to fire somebody from a public sector job. Easier now than it used to be, but still hard. So corporate's the easiest to fire, nonprofits in the middle, public sector is the hardest. And what that means to me, I had to learn late in life. When they say slow to hire, fast to fire, they're right. Because you make one bad mistake with a hire, it can cost you your job, it can even cost you your whole organization. There have been people who've been hired to do a job who wind up stealing money from the organization, right? And that can happen at any level. And that can be enough to take the whole organization down, right? And we've seen it in public sector, we've seen it in nonprofits, we've seen it in corporate. So you want to be slow to hire. And if somebody isn't doing the job, it doesn't matter if they're a nice person. My first fire was actually a layoff, right? A reduction in force. The guy that I had to lay off was the only other male in the whole department, because this was healthcare, right? Everybody else was a woman. He was a deacon in his church. He was the only patient representative in my hospital. But when I was told I had to make a 5% cut, he was the right person to cut. Fortunately, he was also a physician assistant, so he could get another job soon. I was able to hold him on long enough so he got his 10 years in. But, I had to do the right thing. So, as an entrepreneur, one of the best benefits is you get to make choices that employees often don't get to make. But people think, oh, you've got all the choice in the world. No. You've got to do something that brings in money. I did it. I'll give you an example. A lot of us are both employees and entrepreneurs at the same time. Because that's the only way to make the bills work, right? To make the income you need. So at one point, I was working as a cashier at CVS. Not that long ago, okay? I was making $15 an hour. And you know what? I was glad to be making $15 an hour because as a CVS cashier, there was always work. If I wanted to work, I'd just say, can you give me another shift? Done. Not only, but I enjoyed it. I was taking care of people. This is fun, right?
Serving the public.
Serving the public, and let me tell you, I learned some things as a cashier I never learned as a health services executive, okay? But at the same time, I could, if I worked full-time at $15 an hour, that wasn't going to cut it. Even with my wife as a social worker, because that's steady work, but you don't pay social workers like you do MBAs, okay? Which is my degree. So one day, I worked a full shift, well, I worked a 6-hour shift at CVS, and that evening, I delivered a workshop. They paid me $2,500 for that workshop. Yeah, okay. Well, that's great, but you know what? You only get it when you get it.
Oh, yeah,
Okay? So there was one, so that's why I worked the CVS job, because I can make money anytime there. The workshop, only when somebody wants me to do that workshop. Now, to tell you how good it was one day, the best earning day I've ever had in my life. I did a workshop for a pharmaceutical company. Matter of fact, I can tell you who it was. It's Merck. Because they now require anybody who works for them to publicly disclose that you work for them. So, I'm not talking out of school. Did the same kind of workshop that I did for $500 at a community health center, I did for $2,500. And I did it 3 times. They paid me $2,500 each time. $7,500 for the day. Now, I will tell you, I've signed checks for people who charge twice that for a 1-hour workshop. Okay? They have earned the right to make that kind of money. Okay? They've either written a book that's great, they've got, a hot video out there, they're perceived as a national expert on a hot topic. If you ever heard Bill Russell speak, he was worth every penny that he earned. Okay? People were writing notes on his leadership skills. They were just, one of the CEOs came up and said, we couldn't write fast enough. Bill, you really need to put this in a book. He wrote a book called Russell Rules, 11 Lessons on Leadership, from his 11 titles in 13 years. I don't know how much money he made out of that book, but they got a steal. The book is now out of print, but you can get it. I keep copies at home, because when I see somebody who wants to really know about leadership, I say, here, start here, right? I've taught that book. The point is, to be really successful, you have to pay attention to your skills. You talk about proud to be me. If you're going to be an entrepreneur, you better be proud of what you're doing as an entrepreneur. If you're doing something just to make money, there's somebody else out there who has passion, who's doing the same thing, and going to beat the crap out of you. Pardon my language. But they are, because you don't have your heart and soul into it. And you can't compete with somebody who does have their heart and soul into it. Now, I can't be Michael Jordan, or anywhere like that, right? For starters, he's 6'6". I'm 5'9". I could have all the talent in the world at 5'9". There are very few 5'9" NBA players. Spud Webb was one, right? But if you're not that great, you can be great at a lot of other things. I walk through these halls and say, what are your skills? All of us are talented at many things. Find 1 or 2 of them and be an entrepreneur at that, you can do really well, probably, in time. And you know what? Most entrepreneurs, like me, are serial entrepreneurs. You know what that means? They don't just do it once. They do it and they reinvent and they try something else. When Winston Churchill said, if at first you don't succeed, try, or he said, never, never, never give up. It's the same idea. He didn't win office in his first election. He got defeated multiple times before he got there. But he was willing to do it again. Most entrepreneurs, even if they're successful with their first one, right? The guys who invented YouTube, they were incredibly successful, sort of operating out of their garage, right? And then they sold it to somebody else for a lot of money and went to work on something else. Okay? Smart food. Anybody else like smart food?
Yes.
I love smart food. I was seeing my sister at Harvard Business School. The guy, one of the members, there was a team who invented smart food. You know how they started? Software. They invented what they thought was a really hot piece of software, and they got creamed by Lotus 1-2-3, which you may not have heard of. But it made a lot of money. You know.
When I was in school, that's what we used, Lotus.
There you go. So that was really successful, and then it got bought out. Well, these guys came out with a similar product, but they never had the success. So they quit and said, all right, we're going to do something different. They invented smart food. Now you go to the grocery store, you don't just find smart food, the original in white cheddar, you find it in light, you find it in caramel corn. They hit something that worked. And I'm sure they don't own it anymore. They sold it to somebody, Frito-Lay probably. You know, they seem to own everything. Frito-Lay owns Taco Bell and Mountain Dew and all this stuff, right? They're not entrepreneurs, but some entrepreneurs have made the stuff that makes them successful. And then the entrepreneur will take that money and say, all right, I'm gonna go do something else. So back, and I'm gonna stop with this and take questions. Back to my friend Steve Leinheiser, who was the most successful entrepreneur I've ever known. When I first, he was best man at our wedding, I've known him over 40 years. When he was first working as a musician, after going to school, he was working downtown at a camera store and playing wedding gigs on the weekend. Then he built him up to the level where he was playing with, you know, Ray Charles and Julie Andrews and all those folks, right? When I say he was really successful, he was doing something he loved, playing music, his whole career. But he didn't mainly get to choose what he wanted to play. Actually, he still doesn't, even though he's retired. Because you have to find somebody who wants to play that particular music. What he did, he got so good at 10 different instruments, actually probably more than that, that people would come to him if they need these particular 5 instruments. Oh, we need someone who can play oboe, alto sax, soprano sax, and clarinet. Not many people in town can do that. So he was always in demand. So he might be playing The Lion King, and he might be playing, what's the new Michael Jackson, MJ, the musical, or he might be playing what I saw him in is Motown, the musical, right? He doesn't actually get to choose which one of those he plays. He gets to accept or reject an offer because he's an entrepreneur. He was also a union man, so whenever he did play those things, he made union scale. That allowed him to make so much money. Now he's retired. He basically can say, what do I want to play? But only once he retired. I'm in a place where, besides being a caregiver, which takes more time than anything else, I'm also a certified professional coach. So I coach people all over the country by phone or by Zoom. I don't have to go anywhere. I'm on the phone for, say, 55 minutes. For my corporate clients, my broker, I'm hired by a broker, but as an independent consultant. The broker says to IBM, you want 50 slots? We'll give you 50 coaching hours. And then they come to coaches like me and say, would you like to work on this IBM contract? I say, sure. Then an IBM employee interviews me and chooses me. When they choose me, I get paid $150 for each session. It's typically 2 sessions a month. So I earn $300 for each person I coach. That's good, right? It is very good for me. You know, I'm very comfortable with that rate. Sitting at home, but I'm doing what I have been trained how to do, that I've done very well, I'm very successful at. Believe me, there are coaches who make more than that. You think the President of the United States doesn't have a coach? You can bet he does, and you can bet that coach gets a lot more than $150 an hour, right? But it's worth it. I can tell, and I love coaching. You know, but I love a workshop like this more than I love an hour of coaching. Because with coaching, it's one-on-one, and that's a wonderful thing. But talking with a group like this, that's a different wonderful thing. I mean, I'm learning stuff and sharing stuff all the time. So, but it takes a lot to do this. As opposed with a coaching client, especially when I've been working for a while, we just pick up and we start where we left off. We spend an hour, they feel progress, I feel progress, and we're done. $300 a month. But I could probably make more if I were charging myself, but then I'd have to do the billing and the finding clients and etc. I'd much rather have somebody else do that work and then pay me as a contract. So I'm partially saying you got all these choices in how you do. Just like you got choices as becoming an employee, you got choices as becoming an entrepreneur. There's not one size fits all ever. You have lots of choices. And over the course of your career, whether you're going to retire in 5 years, you're going to be working for another 50 years, you'll probably do different versions. And you'll probably do a combination. So what I say to anybody who's interested, if you want to talk about becoming an entrepreneur, I'll talk to anybody anytime. You want to talk about becoming a coach, we need far more coaches of color than we have. Happy to talk to you about that anytime. And if you want to be a coaching client, I tell every coaching client the same thing. You can't find a coach out of the yellow pages. It's just like finding a doctor, finding a lawyer. You got to talk face to face, or at least by Zoom. And any coach will offer you an hour free just to see if it works. Because they don't want to work with you if you're not a fit, and you don't want to work with them if they're not a fit. So you offer an hour, you see if maybe it works. Sometimes it does, and then you go forward. So lots of different ways I'm an entrepreneur at the same time. I love it, and I'll tell you, closing comment. Before I became an entrepreneur this last time, I was executive director for the first time. I'm talking about nonprofits. I was an executive director of Us2 International, prostate cancer organization. I'm a prostate cancer survivor. I was the first survivor to be their ED, that most of their board members was. I was the first Black ED. I thought it was going to be my job for life. The pandemic came, lots of things changed. I lasted a year. You're now part of a larger organization. But if a job like that came along with a good salary and benefits, paid vacation, retirement plan, I'd stop being an entrepreneur like that. I have never worked as hard as an employee as I have as an entrepreneur, but I've had a lot of fun. I've had dream jobs. I've never had as much fun as an employee as I have as an entrepreneur. So it's all about your choice. One size does not fit all. If you got questions, bring them on.
I was going to ask you, now let's say if somebody, like you was talking about McDonald's,
Yeah.
you don't want to put in the work that they, ordering, or whatever it is that a franchisee does.
Right.
Right, but now, my situation is, somebody already has something going in another state.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I think it's in Massachusetts.
Okay.
And so I've been given the go ahead to go ahead, and it's the same name, and they do the same things, but just to do this in Illinois, and this is something that I'm very passionate about.
Cool. Sounding good so far.
So, just because I'm passionate about it doesn't mean that I got the layout on, where to start.
Amen.
But it's just, okay, the fire is there, but, it's like, maybe the fire isn't there. The want is there, and this is something that I definitely want, and I feel like I need to do, because I'm real passionate about it, but.
Okay, so let me go to the key question. If I were in your shoes, I'd be asking myself, how much risk and failure can I manage financially and emotionally? Okay, so suppose this organization is successful in mass, and it doesn't fly in Illinois for whatever reason. It may not have anything to do with you, right? When the pandemic hit, it killed a lot of businesses who were doing fine before. They'd been doing fine for years, but they couldn't switch. So if this new piece that you want to bring to Illinois, first, I assume they want some money up front to bring it to Illinois, right?
No, what they say, it has to do with prisoners.
Okay.
And it has to do with, it's going to be called Children of Incarcerated Parents. And they already have it going on. And my daughter was the child of an incarcerated parent. And I just met her 2 years ago, because of the time and stuff that I did and everything. And so I just feel like that this is something that I should be doing for children, that has parents that are incarcerated.
Right, so you're a social entrepreneur. You clearly have the motivation. You've got somebody who can give you some of the nuts and bolts. Those are good things, but it's still, you got to answer the question. How much risk can you take? How much failure can you take?
Okay,
If so suppose that you do like a lot of entrepreneurs do. You don't leave your day job. You keep your day job and you start working on your side business, your side hustle, okay? If the side hustle takes more time than you expect, it could make you quit your day job or get you fired from your day job. Can you afford that? Can you afford that financially? Can you afford that emotionally? When you're working a job as an employee, you get a lot of things besides a paycheck, right? You get an organization that you are affiliated with, that you're proud of. You get people to work with. You get a lot of things.
Like family.
But it's like a family. Entrepreneurs don't have that. Entrepreneurs generally start as solopreneurs. We're just one person. At the most, I've had a team of 5 of us who were actually working on the same organization. And it's not the same as a project. These people had some degree of commitment to the Center for Culturally Fluent Leadership, which I still lead, but now it's only one person. But this was not their full-time gig. All of them did other things, most of them working for themselves and sometime working for me. So they weren't a family the same way as folks I see 5, 6, 7 days a week. So I had to give some of that up to be an entrepreneur. It was worth it to me because I still got to see them some of the time. And one of the things I had to learn the hard way, when you're an entrepreneur and you're by yourself most of the time, you have to learn not to spend too much time at your clients' sites, getting the benefit of their family and employees. You can spend some, but if you're spending time to fill your needs instead of their needs, that's not smart. They don't teach you that in the books, but I'm going to tell you right now it is. So if you're going to make that transformation, I say it's not a transition, it's a transformation. These are some of the things to think about. Okay? When you've got a job that's not only a steady paycheck, but it's all the benefits and the rest of that, cost out how much are they giving you besides the paycheck. Because you're not going to get those things as an entrepreneur. So if you're going to bring in, one consultant friend of mine early on in my career said, you know, I never take a vacation. When I got the money, I don't have the time. When I've got the time, I don't have the money. I couldn't do that. I've got kids. Kids don't understand that dad's not around, can't take me on vacation to Disney World or whatever because he's working so hard. You know, you can do that, but I don't recommend it if you're going to be a parent. You know, you can be away for lots of reasons, and one of them is working in an entrepreneurial job that has sucked you up so much that you're not available. These are real risks. It doesn't mean it's not worth it. It could be worth it. You know, I worked with a guy, we were partners in a business. His kids were adults. My kids were still young. His risks weren't the same as mine. And he wanted to take some risks I couldn't take. And eventually, after years of trying to make it work, we got a cordial divorce. And he went off running his business, and I went off running what was left of mine, and I've still been back and forth. One of the things that pissed him off is like, we're just getting things going right now. You want to go work for somebody else? You know, you're leaving me hanging. I'm like, bro, I got to do what's best for my family. You have done the same thing your whole life, and you've known the mistakes when you don't put your family first. So, just some things to think about. I'm not saying it's the right thing or the wrong thing. It could be the best thing you ever decide to do. Because if it satisfies your needs, emotional and financial, and you can grow it over the long term, it will likely be the best things you've ever done.
So, because I never thought about go ahead and hollering at a coach. I never.
Most people don't.
Because, you know, some of us think we got this.
And you know what, bro? We got a lot, but none of us got it all.
Yeah,
you know, I work with a guy right now. He's not my coach, but we're business partners in effect, right? I pay him if he's doing work directly for me. Like, say I'm writing a piece, I need him to edit it. He's a businessman, I'm not. He spent a lot of time in corporate America, I've never been there. So if I'm writing something, I need him to make it into business English, I'll pay him for that. But if we're doing something together, we do a lot on LinkedIn together, I don't pay him for that because it benefits both of us. Both of our names go on that article, okay? So a coach helps you do things you can't do on your own. All of us have things we can do on our own, other things we can't. Michael Jordan won 6 titles, but if Doug Collins had been his coach, I bet you never would have won one. Okay? Now, it's not to say that Phil Jackson won the titles for him, but there's a reason why Phil Jackson has 11
Well,
rings.
Doug Collins was his coach for 7 years.
And what did they win?
Nothing.
That's my point.
Nothing.
Phil Jackson comes in and they win 6 titles
Yeah.
together. And then he moves on, he wins titles with the Lakers. And
Boom.
that's what his book on leadership is called 11 Rings. He played, he played before he coached?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, okay,
And
your
those
sports, right?
elbows.
That's right.
Yeah.
He wasn't much as a player. Most successful coaches and managers are mediocre players, but they learn the game and then they go coach, okay? So the point is, what a coach does, this is not what you do with coaching an employee. Typically with coaching an employee, you're either trying to turn around somebody who's underperforming, or you're trying to get rid of somebody who's underperforming. That's what I'm talking about. I'm a leadership coach. I help leaders get to be better leaders. And one of the best things about coaching, I don't have to know my client's business. I'm dealing with a couple people now who are in construction. I don't know squat about construction. But I know how people work, and I know how to help you be better at what you do. You know the business. I'm here to help you be a more successful leader.
So, when I facilitate, I blurt stuff out I've heard. Sometimes not even with researching it. It sound good, the crowd that I got, they're gonna fall for it anyway. But I wanted to ask you,
Yes, sir.
before I lose my train of thought. Is it true, in your perspective, is it true that all leaders were once great followers?
The best leaders were all great followers.
Okay, the best, not all.
Not all leaders. There are a ton of leaders who never know how to follow.
Yeah.
No, there are no born leaders. That's one thing I totally agree with Bill Russell about. We all learn to lead, but we are all leaders. I tell my audiences sometimes, look, you think you're not a leader, right? You're a cashier somewhere. Nobody is responsible to you. Nobody even has opinion. You're still a leader. Because when you go to the grocery store and you're now a customer, right? My kids, or somebody's kids, are going to be watching how you treat that cashier. How do you treat the next customer in line? You are leading by example.
That's right.
By what you do. And there are two main ways to lead by example. Main ways for leaders to lead. One is by example. Because if you talk the talk and don't walk the walk, nobody's following you. But the other way is by incentive. What do I reward people for? Do I say, well, she's done a good job at this, I'm going to give her a raise. Or probably I'm not going to give her a raise, I'm going to give you a bonus. Okay? Because your bonus, you got to win over and over. I give you a raise, you got that locked in. So that takes a lot for me to give you a raise. If I give you a bonus, I don't even have to give you a bonus because that was a really good job. I want you to teach other people how to do what you just did. That's praise. And there are leaders who have no idea how to give praise. Drives me friggin' crazy. That's about as easy. All you gotta do is look and open your mouth. Now, you put some money behind it, that's even better. But just saying thank you. Saying you did a good job there.
An accolade.
An accolade.
Mm-hmm.
Simple recognition is incredibly powerful. I did a workshop on feedback. 6 volunteers, like you guys, right? They took an hour out at lunchtime to come to my workshop instead of doing their work. Their work wasn't getting done by anybody else. It was just waiting for them when they got back, right? So these are 6 committed people. So I asked, all right, how many of you have gotten praise from your manager in the last week? You know how many hands went up?
No.
None. And that doesn't surprise you. That is a shame. And it's partially because of the way we are generally taught, which is to look for problems and solve problems. Well, there will always be problems, but we don't see things the way they are, we see things the way we are. And if I only look for problems, that's all I'm gonna find. If I'm gonna look for success, you were a preschool teacher, oh my goodness,
Yes.
you look for success all the time.
Yeah, and the children and the parents, but then on the other side, being a teacher in the classroom, we get rolled over by the bus, by the director, and I understand she got people over her that's probably doing the same thing to her, but then that brings down morale. So me and the other 2 teachers are talking like, man, and I'm like, retirement's starting to look good to me, even though I won't be making much. I have a peace of mind. Another one, she's working on her master's, and she's like, I don't have to be here. And another teacher is like entering into the field, but she had worked as the front desk and clerical, and she's like, oh, wait a minute. But we encourage her to go further on because
Exactly.
she has a child with a disability, and I see myself in her because she has a lot
She
to
is so lucky
offer.
to have you.
You know, and but then the
Absolutely.
site director said something about her to me when I was in the class in her office. I said, you know what she brings in? Her expertise with her child. Just like I brought mine as I was
And
learning
you
with
can't
my
buy
child.
that. You can't go recruit that.
Right.
You can't go say, I want someone with expertise from lived experience.
Right.
But you get somebody
exactly.
who walks in your door with that, you better know how to value it.
Because when I was having my meltdown, one of the managers said, Vanessa, you are always able to walk in a classroom and make a difference. I said, I'm tired. Because I had, see, they don't know the full extent of my
And they don't
personal
need
life.
to know.
They
Right.
knew about my child having a disability, and I was working there when it happened. But then at the same token, I was worn out and overwhelmed.
And the most important, not the most, one of the most important things that you're saying there is self-care has to come first. You have to put your mask on first. You gave and gave and gave until you said, I can't give anymore.
Right.
Most of us